Howdy, partner. Welcome to one of the most northern parts of the United States of America. Travel with me upriver as we talk to a bunch of ladies and fellers and they share their tales of wit and wisdom. That's right, it's time again for Skagit Storytellers.
With Liz Duffy. I usually like to start with talking about how we met. I think we might have met at Zeke's Pizza when Cats Like Us was playing.
Oh.
Do you remember that? Was that the first time we met?
Well, I remember playing there. It was the only time we played there.
That was the only time?
Yeah, that's the only time we've played there. I guess I do remember seeing you there.
We had the kids with us, Spencer and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're playing Doors songs. No one plays Doors covers. And I don't know if you heard Stone's episode.
No,
when
I haven't heard it.
You know all about Stone. You don't need to listen. But I was saying to Stone, I thought it was really cool that you guys played Doors covers because no one does that. And he said, well, you need a really good keys player, and we have Bob. And so, yeah, I thought, oh, you're right. There is lots of keyboard in the Doors.
Yeah. The Doors were a big influence on me. Ray Manzarek, and it was a keyboard-based band, really.
I'm super excited because literally I know your name is Bob Paltrow, and I know you from Cats Like Us, and that's it. That's all I know.
I want to tell you from the start, because this is Skagit Storytellers, right? That's the name of the show.
Well, we'll call it Whatcom Storytellers right now.
Well, no, but I have I'm a big proponent of the Skagit and Whatcom connection. So I do have a Skagit Valley connection, and it happened to be there was an open mic that was going on in downtown Bellingham. They had featured acts, and so Slack and Flood from Anacortes, they were featured act there. Maybe I knew Geo already. And anyway, they said, oh, you should meet these guys, and they need a keyboard player. They're just a trio, and they do a lot of R&B soul stuff that has keys, and they didn't do it at that time. Now they do. Tom Savage plays keyboards now. But so I hooked up with those guys, and that was my introduction to it. And so I was going down and playing a lot of their gigs in and around Anacortes, but all over this area. And
what band was that?
Slack and Flood.
Oh, you were playing with them.
I was playing with them.
Oh, okay.
I played with them for about 2 years. Yeah. I met them through the open mic scene, and I was playing with them. And so I was driving down there all the time from Bellingham to practice, because we'd rehearse at Tom's house, and he lived basically downtown Anacortes. And I loved going down there. I loved the drive. Anyway,
yeah, it's
it was
a beautiful
great.
area.
I just crank up the stereo and, and roll. It's a beautiful drive. And then probably, so I did, and I met people, and I knew of, I started meeting and seeing Whiskey Fever. I knew, met Jack, or I knew who Jack was, and Dylan, among other people, which there's going to be a revelation about that. But anyway, I was meeting people, and then what was even a bigger kind of influence or vehicle for me meeting Skagit people was Slack and Flood played band camp, Tim Fisher's band camp. Right. And so that alone is so I went to that, and I played with them there, and then I met, and that's a Skagit scene. Tim, right? Tim used to live in Anacortes, but he bought this property up there. I don't know if you've been to that band camp.
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah? So that's an extraordinary event, right?
It is.
It's bands for bands. Nobody's paying to be there. It's not an open, you could bring your significant other or your kids or whatever, but it's bands. It's a really unique event. To have music for 2 days and all these bands. So I met a lot of Skagit people there. Flash forward to today. This is our third season as Cats Like Us. And we're now a 5-piece, but we've been a 4-piece until last weekend.
So it's you.
It's myself and Stone Jones and Miguel Garibay. and
I've heard of him.
and Selena Mack, and Selena Mack, and
The banker.
The banker, yes, yeah, she's the banker.
So who's your mysterious fifth member?
So we've been a 4-piece for 4 years, and we just needed something. Anyway, we needed a second guitarist. So Dylan Dalgarn.
Really?
Yeah, is playing with us.
That's awesome.
When he's available, he's his first love is Nurhaci.
Of course.
Yep. And so but yeah, he's going to be playing some shows with us. We've had some rehearsals. We just had one this last Sunday. I have a birthday show coming up on March 15th.
Oh.
Downtown Bellingham.
Oh, I saw that at
I'll be making a bigger deal of it this week. It's called Nacho Problems.
Yes.
Yeah. It's connected to a place called Bella Ciao.
Oh, the pizza place that Pete does the open mic at.
Yes.
Okay.
Same place, same owner. He owns both those venues. I went to an open mic at Bella Ciao. Pete was running it. And I looked in that room and I was like, I lived in Tucson, Arizona for 20 years of my life. And it looked like a little Mexican bar. It looked like the kind of bar that I would go into in like Nogales, Mexico, border town bar. And there was nothing going on there. It was just dark and it just had like purple lights and stuff. And I'm like, I'm like, what is that? What is this place? And they said, oh, this is our event room. And I'm like, pfft. So anyway, I'm doing my birthday party there. It's cool.
I'm glad that you brought up that you lived in Arizona. You weren't born in Skagit or Whatcom.
No.
Okay, where were you born?
I was born in Miami, Florida. That's where my parents met. My mother married my stepdad down there. And then we moved to New York when I was 3. And then my parents split up, and my brother and I ended up living with my dad. And when I was 10, my mother was out of the picture, so it was just my dad, my brother, and I in Massapequa, Long Island. And I was in 4th grade, and I was just getting into music and stuff. And my dad said one day, he said, boys, your grandparents are getting you a piano. We're delivering it Wednesday or whatever, and they want you to get into music. And I was like, I was getting into music, but I was getting into rock and roll, mostly like Southern rock, of all things. We were really into that.
Was someone playing Southern rock in the house? Like,
first band I ever saw was Marshall Tucker Band. All my friends, our scene was like Lynyrd Skynyrd, Marshall Tucker, The Outlaws, Allman Brothers. I don't know why, but that's what we were into in the 70s, early mid-70s.
Yeah.
On Long Island. That's what we were into. And I was like ready to play guitar. I was ready to, and I told my dad, I said, oh, that's great, they're getting a piano. I said, but what I really want to do, what I heard was like, they want you to get into music. And I'm like, great, I'm ready to play guitar. And my dad was like, no.
Why was he so against it?
You're going to play piano. You're going to take piano lessons.
No reason.
That's what he wanted.
But he wasn't like, you can't play guitar because this.
My dad had a music degree. My dad had a degree from Ithaca College in New York to teach music, so he had a music degree. He was a professional musician. He was a great accordion player. He sang when he graduated college in, I don't know, that must be like 50s. He sang with the Winged Victory Chorus, which was a professional men's chorus that toured the Americas, North, South, Central America. He did that. But he bagged music. He ended up being a DJ in Miami, Florida when he met my mother. And then when we moved to New York in the 60s, he literally became a madman. He was on Madison Avenue. He worked for a big advertising agency, repping, at his agencies, the top 200 radio and TV stations across the country. So anyway, he had an upbringing. He had a class, we're Jewish. I don't know. We were like
that's what you do. You learn the piano.
We learn the Jewish. I think are very much we're very much into education and the arts and a strong liberal arts. Like you took everything. We all took like you took dance. You were like theater. All the arts. You want. I don't know. You were raised, I don't want to say bred, raised to be literal in the arts. I guess that was a big deal. But my dad was really focused on the piano. And I was like, anyway, I can say whatever I want to this mic.
Stone.
I was like, fuck this,
Stone
man.
swore a lot.
Yeah, he said that a lot. He says that a lot. And
well, is your brother older, younger?
my brother was 4 years younger. So we had this piano teacher, Grace Oglesby, and we both taken lessons. And my brother and I was 10, he was 6. And he took it to it right away. He was like, little kids, if they can pick, right? With your child. I mean, they can just pick up. If they pick up something, they can pick it up easily. If they love it, they're doing it. So he was very good. I hated it. I had to practice a half hour every day after school. My dad wasn't home. We had like nannies. So we had people, women, and we had nannies, and anyway, but I had to do my half hour every day and I hated it. I hated it and I wasn't good at it. I didn't show an aptitude. My brother was great. Then 2 years later, I was at the mall with my friends in Massapequa, at the Massapequa Mall, I guess. I don't know what it was. I can't remember what it was called. Long Island Mall. We were at a Sam Goodies, went into a Sam Goodies looking for music and stuff. And I was like into Led Zeppelin. That was my thing. That was my bag. I'm like into Zeppelin. And then I look over to my left in the store and there's a huge sheet music section. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know they had. I'm like, do they have rock and roll? They had everything. They had anything, everything. I didn't know. I was 12. I just thought sheet music was like classical music. That's what I thought.
Oh.
Classical music, jazz, instruction books and stuff. But no, they had everything. ELO, Elton John, everything. Huge music section. The Beatles, they had everything. And I'm like, what is this? I was with my friends, and none of my friends took music lessons and stuff. And I'm like, no, I got to check this shit out. And then I'm like, I wonder if they have Led Zeppelin, because Zeppelin's The Four had just come out. Stairway to Heaven. That album had just come out.
Oh, okay.
That album was out. That was like, I was on that album. And I'm like, there's Led Zeppelin. I get chills. I do. I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I can't believe it. And then I'm like, there's Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, there's no way they have Stairway to Heaven. Boop, they have Stairway to Heaven. I'm like, what? I'm like...
But this is on piano. Like
this is piano music.
Yeah.
It's sheet music. It's piano music. And I'm like, I want to learn. I buy the sheet music. And then this was in my head. This was my narrative about what was going to happen. But my dad didn't want me to play guitar. I resented playing the piano. I was going to learn this Led Zeppelin song. I was going to learn Stairway to Heaven on the piano without my dad knowing, without my piano teacher knowing. I was going to learn it until I could just rip that shit. And then I was going to play it. I was going to spring it on my piano teacher one day when I had it down, when I could just wail it. Like the whole guitar solo at the end, I envisioned myself learning that and playing it on piano. And then I was going to play it for Grace Oglesby. I was just going to spring it on her blind, and I was going to tell her and my dad to fuck off. I'm done with piano. This is this is Led Zeppelin, dudes. I'm not doing this Brahms. I'm not doing these like Schumann books, the scales and stuff. Sick of it. Sick of having to sit down for a half hour every day of my life, being forced to do something I didn't want to do. This was what I visioned. So I learned the song. So I'm learning the song like when nobody was around. When Shirley, our first housekeeper, when she was our first nanny, when she wasn't around or whatever, like, or when she was cooking and like my brother wasn't there and my dad wasn't there, he was at work or whatever. I'm like learning the song. So I'd be learning. I couldn't wait to get home and learn it. And then I'm learning it months, maybe. I don't know how long it took. It probably didn't take that long. Maybe a couple of months, maybe 2 months. And then I'm like, I went through the whole thing and they had and I'm like, I didn't know there were things like beginner sheet music or intermediate sheet music or whatever. But I learned this piece of sheet music and I'm like, this sucks. This doesn't sound anything like Led Zeppelin. But what I had was beginner sheet music.
Oh.
It was for beginners. And I was a beginner, but I didn't want to be a beginner. I wanted to play the piano like Jimmy Page plays guitar. And I'm like, this is bogus. This is not, I felt ripped off for the 50 cents I spent to get that sheet music in 1974 or whatever, 5. And so I said, I'm listen to it. I had the record, I had the vinyl, this big stereo record player, TV console unit you had back in the day in the 60s, TV and the record player all in one. It looked like a piece of furniture. It was made out of fancy wood, all modern, tapered legs. Anyway, and so I'm listening to it and I'm like trying to play it on the piano. And I did. And then finally I learned it. And I'm like, it wasn't exact like Jimmy Page, but I had a rip and lead. I had it down. And then I was ready to play it for Grace Oglesby, and I'm like 12 now. And I'm like, I chickened out like 3 or 4 times. Like I waited for the end of my lesson, and I just chickened out. And then finally, it was the 4th time maybe. I just was like, we got to the end of the lesson, and I said, Mrs. Oglesby, I got something to play for you. And I thought Grace Oglesby, I thought she was like an old lady. To me, she was an old lady, but she was probably like 35, right? Yeah. But I just thought she was as old. She was Scottish. She was Scottish. She was Scottish. And every year they did a recital at her house. And piano with all her students. She had like 30 students, including her son, who was 15 years old, and he was like the prince. He was like the student. And then they were Scottish, and her husband and his friends, they had like a bagpipe club, so they would always do that at the recitals, one every year. So I had been to 1 or 2, and so anyway, that was her background. I thought she was this old lady, and I said, Mrs. Oglesby, I got this song I want to play for you. And she was like, oh, really? Because I had never done anything like that. I hated playing piano. She knew it. I said, it's this song by this band called Led Zeppelin. And she goes, oh, she said, I love them. And I'm like cringing. I'm like, lady, you don't even know who they are. I'm like, you're so full of shit. I just thought she was like condescending to me, or just like being like weirdly nice for some reason.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine she was just actually knew them and thought they were cool. No idea. And I said, it's this song called Stairway to Heaven. And she says, that's a beautiful song. Why don't you play it? And I'm like, I feel so cringe. I'm like, I'm in my head. I'm like, she doesn't know this song. And so I play it, and I'm nervous as hell as I start, and I get to the solo at the end. And by that time in the song, I was like all hot and sweaty. And I was like raging. I was like, this is it. This is everything I dreamed of doing. I'm in it. I'm Jimmy Page. I'm embodying him right now. I'm going to put all of what I have into this, and then I'm going to tell them to fuck off. I'm not taking any more piano lessons. I'm done. Like, I'm going to run away, or I'm going to I'm just going to go with my friends and smoke cigarettes all day and like leave, And so I got done, and I was just waiting. My dad wasn't home yet from work. So she was there, with the lesson, and I got done and I stopped, and I was just waiting to be in trouble. And she said, Bob, that was really amazing. And she said, I have 30 students. And she said, I don't have one student. She said, I don't have one student that improvises. And I said, what does that mean? I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. And she explained it to me, just kind of like, filling in the gaps. And I said, yeah, but I couldn't play his lead exactly. And she said, yeah, but you did your own thing with it. You kind of took it on its own little journey. And I did. And she said, none of my students are able to do that. And I said, not even your son? The prince, the 15-year-old, her son, perfect blonde, straight, long, lithe. He was beautiful, perfect posture. Hands were just long. He was piano. He was bred. He was like Chopin reincarnated, in a Scottish body. I don't know. And she's like, no, he doesn't. He's very good. He's very good classical, but he doesn't do that. And I said, oh. And she said, I'm going to make you a deal. She said, you go out and pick whatever music you want to play, or you tell me what it is that you want to play, anything, what you want to play, any rock and roll, anything you want to play, any Queen. I was getting into Elton John. I got into Elton John big time, of course. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I could play all those albums. But she was like, if you pick out whatever music you want, sheet music you want, and you can just learn it. And if you need my help learning it, you'll learn it. And she said, and in return, you won't have to do any more scales, no more Schumann books, no more workbooks, none of that. You'll have to do none of that. But what you will have to do, you'll have to do one classical piece by one of the greats, Chopin, Brahms, Beethoven, Mozart, whatever, right? You have to work on one piece, at least intermediate level too. She said, you're not going to do beginning stuff anymore. You're done. You're not doing exercises or scales. You don't need to do that. Because in fact, I could do it. And
so you did piano for years with her. Did you ever get that guitar?
No. I never had a guitar. I never had a guitar in that time in New York. And I lived in New York until I was 15, until the middle of my sophomore year of high school. And then we moved to Arizona. And I think I might have ended up with a guitar somehow in Arizona. My dad made it a condition that I take a piano lesson if I wanted to continue living at home.
Oh.
While I went to college. He was like, you can live at home, but you're going to take lessons with Mickey Greco, who was this jazz great guy in Tucson, piano player. And anyway, that's a whole interview unto itself. But he was great. I only studied with him for a year, but I learned so much just about jazz and life. And then 1 year at university level, for me in Tucson, I was majoring in music, piano performance, and I flunked out of that program.
Oh.
Yep, I was academically disqualified. I didn't go to class. I was going on a grant. I defaulted on it. I was just partying was really the issue. But I didn't like it. And so the whole time, though, to answer your question, no, I never found anybody to play music with the whole time I lived in Arizona. Yep. When I lived in New York, I got together with my friend Jack Carney twice. I went to his house, and he played guitar, and I had that piano over there, and we tried to, but it was he lived on the other side of the town, and we were young kids. It was too hard for us to get around and really do it, get on buses. We didn't have cars.
So your first band experience was here?
When I moved here, yeah, my first music experience was actually playing out. I always played music. There was always a piano at home. I wrote. I did compose. I didn't write really lyrics for songs, but I did compose music all the time, almost right away. As soon as I was really getting into it, I was making up songs and compositions, and yeah, I always did that. But I didn't know anybody. Tucson, very visual arts town. There's a lot of visual arts, tons of it. And also the Mexican culture is beautiful there. It's very impactful. So there's a lot of Mexican culture. There's a lot of Mexican music. There's great visual arts. I ended up getting an art degree from the University of Arizona, the same school I got kicked out of. I went back and got an art degree. But Bellingham has 10 times the music scene that Tucson, a city of 1 million, does. Way more. More going on.
From Florida to New York to Arizona, these were all moves because of your parents.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So what made you, now you're in your 30s?
Yeah.
Coming up to Whatcom, what made you come up here?
When I graduated college, I ended up graduating when I was 28 because I flunked out, did construction for a number of years. And that drove me to go back to college. So I did. I got my art degree when I was 28. And then I was a graphic design degree, majored in, it's called, I went for a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and they changed the name of it when I was in school. They changed the name of it to a Bachelor of Arts and Sciences. And so I got this Bachelor of Arts and Sciences with a graphic design and illustration emphasis, and I minored in art history, whatever. And so I got out of there, and then that was 1990 I graduated. So then I'm looking for jobs, and then I think that's about the time that like Starbucks was starting to go big, and there was a guy in Tucson, now looking back, who was like a narcissistic megalomaniac, but he really wanted to be the next Starbucks. And Mike, sorry if you're out there or whatever, you're probably, I don't know who, whatever, but it was called Coffee Etc. It doesn't exist anymore, but he had 3 restaurants, and it was based on the Starbucks model, and he hired me in-house. And so I was the graphic designer there, and he wasn't giving me enough hours. So I was just like, at first I was full-time, and then he cut me back to like 20, and I'm like, I gotta find some hours. So I look in a local rag for jobs, and I see this thing like independent new age music label needs part-time graphic designer. And I'm like, oh, cool, like record label? I just saw record. I didn't care that was new age. I'm like, independent record label. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I drive down to the address, and I'm like, got the this is like before map apps, right? It's 1990. I'm looking at a map or whatever, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I'm going into South Tucson, and I cross the tracks, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm in the barrio, man. Like, I'm in the barrio. Like, what is this? Like, I'm picturing like a record company, right? I got big visions, big dreams. I'm going to work for a record company. And I'm like, in the barrio. And I'm like, what? And I pull up to the house, a Mountain Street address, and I like pull up, and it's just like, there's all these old used Toyota little shit Honda's vehicles in a big semicircular in front of this house. And the whole house has barred windows, which is not unusual. All the houses in Tucson do. You have to have bars. It's typical.
Because of crime?
Because of crime.
Oh.
Yeah, even in the high district rent living areas, even in the burbs, whatever. Yeah, it's not unusual. But I'm like, holy God, and I'm like, is this right? And then I walk up and I knock on the door, and like this tough looking chick with like a denim skirt and like combat boots, and like looks like a total punk chick. And I'm here for this address. And so anyway, that I ended up working there, and that was called Soundings of the Planet. It's a new age music label, and they were on the rise, and they had been around since 1978. And it was based on this couple, Dean and Dudley. Dean is their husband and wife, and he plays flute. He was an audio engineer in college, and he was one of the first people, going back, I guess, to the early 70s. He was one of the first people that was like commercially, I guess, or on tapes. They were making their own tapes, but combining music and nature sounds.
Oh.
That was their thing. And he had a music background and playing silver flute, but he became also very good and kind of one of the first people, I guess, to bring like native flute to wood flute to, well, really to like awareness and even commercial usage and stuff. And so they were on the rise, and anyway, they had become successful, and they had 11 employees at that time, or I was the 11th employee at this house on Mountain Street. But Dean and Dudley didn't live there. They made their money selling their music at arts and crafts fairs across the country. They started doing it themselves. They would get a booth, and they'd have their cassettes, and he played flute, and she played auto harp. He was like the magnet, the thing. He had the native flute and nature sounds, and then she was there just regal and beautiful playing the harp. But she was the marketing. Anyway, they were a perfect couple. They were symbiotic in their ability to start this business. So they were going around in arts and crafts booths and and playing music and selling tapes, and that became so they couldn't do it all. They got too busy, so they had to hire people. So it ended up at the peak, we had a person on staff that managed craft fair people. And craft fair people were basically like sales reps. They were sales reps, and the sales reps, they just had craft fair booths around the country selling Soundings of the Planet music. Like I could be a sales rep anywhere in Florida, and it was a thing. And it was a thing. This music with nature sounds, it's perfect. It's like perfect, quote, meditation, yoga music. That was the thing. It was a new thing. Now it's everywhere, right? It's in every elevator or whatever. But it was a new thing then, and especially into the 70s, even into 80s and 90s, even now still. 2 years ago, Dean went over 1 billion listens on Pandora. Same guy.
Wow.
But when I started working for them, they were so successful. They had 3 kids, young kids. They wanted to get away from the business. So they had done craft fairs all over the country. They had traveled everywhere, Dean and Dudley themselves. Before now they had other people doing it. But they decided they did a craft fair in Bellingham, Washington. And they moved here. So So when I started working at the record label, it was 6 months before I met them. I just heard of them, Dean and Dudley. I didn't know exactly where they lived. I just knew they didn't live there. And at that time, when I got hired, the area code for Bellingham was still 206. And in Arizona, the area code for the whole state was 602. What was it? Somehow, in Arizona it was one thing. But anyway, they hired me there, and in the last step of my hiring process, I always had a dream of moving to Seattle. I had never been here when I was a kid or whatever. So in the last step of my hiring process, they said, you got to have a phone interview with Dean and Dudley that's the last part of the interview, before we'll hire you. You got to call them and talk to them. I'm like, okay, and they gave me the phone number. And it said, it must have said 206. Is that Seattle?
I think that's Seattle, yeah.
Yeah. It must have said, no, it said 602. But I thought they transposed the numbers when they wrote it down.
Yeah.
And I thought it can't be Seattle. It's got to be Phoenix, because Phoenix was 602. They have to live in Phoenix. Why would they live in Seattle? Why would they live so far away from their business in Tucson? Why would they live in Washington? That's crazy, right? I mean, I don't know. It just didn't occur to me. So I thought, so I dialed the number. I transposed the numbers, called that number, and it was a wrong number. And I'm like, huh? And so then I called them, and I said, where are you guys? Where is this? Where am I reaching you? And they said, we're in Bellingham, Washington. I'm like, where's that? Never heard of it. And they said, it's right by Seattle. It's just north of Seattle. And I'm like, what? So I worked for them for maybe a year and a half. I met them after that. They came down. We'd have company retreats every year in Tucson. They'd come down, and that's when I met them. And then I came up once. They were working on a big album, big Forest Rain, big project. They were big in the environmental. They still are. They're very big in the environmental movement here. And this album was raising consciousness about like stopping old growth, cut down and stuff. So we were very into that. They were very into that. They were very into environmentalism as a business. They still are. It's foundational. They didn't just like put nature sounds on the music. They were, they revered it and were politically and socially and environmentally active in it. So this album was all about they were bringing in Native American artists on it to collaborate with Dean, because it was about old growth forests that were under threat here and everywhere, but especially here in their neighborhood, right here in Bellingham, right in Fairhaven. Anyway, there's some old growth trees there, and which is now a preserve. So they were like, you should come up and help us work on the album. We got to work, come up, So I came up here for 3 weeks, and that was 1992, I think. Came up to Fairhaven for 3 weeks. On my way up, actually, I flew into Seattle. I had a friend that moved to Bellevue from Tucson, an ex-girlfriend, so I hung out with her for a little bit. maybe 5 days. And then I came up here for the rest of the 3 weeks. And then I'm like, in July, and I was like, I lived in Tucson in New York. I'd never experienced anything. I'd never been to this part of the country, like all the lakes, and there was like the weather, and I think bumper shoot was going on, like all this crap. It was like the peak of grunge and stuff, and it was like I was like, whoa, I was blown away. So I ended up extending my stay to 6 weeks, and when I left here, and then I met a woman in Bellingham that I was hot for, and then I was like, and then I had to go back to Tucson, and I was like, I was clear as day to me. Like when I left here, I'm like, there's no way I can go back and live in Arizona after being here. There's just no way. No, there's so much more. I don't know. It was like, I mean, even like Tucson's a desert and it's beautiful, but in a lot of ways, it's like, I don't know, like a cultural desert, you know, and if you're inspired by your environment, there's just so much more to be inspired by up here, the lakes and the trees and the orcas and just like it's eagles and like owls. It's crazy. It's crazy. So that's how I came up. It took me, I went back and I was back up here within 6 months. I drove up here in old Mazda 626. And
you were still working for them?
And I was still working for them, yeah. Yeah, I was like even working for them I worked for them for a long time. I ended up taking on other clients. I ended up, forming an LLC because they couldn't, anyway, it was back and forth in terms of being an employee with them. But I did work for them pretty steadily up until maybe 2021 during COVID. Anyway, they went like everybody. We all went through a lot of changes, but
yeah,
a lot of changes that they went through as a business and personnel. And
what do you do now for work?
What do I do now for work?
Yeah.
I have Bob Paltrow Design, and so I've been doing that. Yeah, that's what I've been doing forever. It's an LLC. I've been doing it since I moved. They laid me off shortly after I moved here. It was crazy. I asked for a raise and like all kinds. And then one day, like within a very couple of months, even they laid me off. It was crazy. I had to collect unemployment, and I for 9 months was the duration of the unemployment, and that was cool. But I was applying for jobs in Bellingham at printers and all kinds of things. And nobody was hiring. And then I was like, somehow I just I get little freelance jobs and stuff. And then when my unemployment ran out, like these places that I like interviewed for, they started calling me back and say, hey, well, you want to come in? And I'm like, I'm too busy now, man. I got my own business. I'm doing my own thing. So a lot of it was music related. Graphics, I still had that niche. I still was doing work for Dean and Dudley. And then, they hired me back. But I don't know if I ever went back on as an employee, but I ended up just contracting to them, I think. But it was they're still my landlords. And
oh, really?
Yeah. I still rent, and I still live on a property where they have a recording studio. They've created something very much like what you're creating here. It's the same thing. They built a studio on their property. Anyway, they bought a piece of property actually that had an outbuilding on it, and they converted it into a studio. And it still is. They've made many renovations to it. And so anyway.
So that's your like career journey.
So my career journey is, so I'm still doing design. I guess I still, I don't know. I've had little niches. I had a musician's niche, but that industry has changed. I've probably designed like hundreds, 500 easily, like CD covers, a lot of them for that label, but a lot of them for independent artists. And there's no CDs anymore. I designed some cassettes. There were still cassettes and some. So there's none of that. There's no print advertising. That's something I used to do. Everybody used to have a catalog. Now everybody has a website. There's no catalogs. So I learned web design kind of like I had to. I'm really good at it. I guess I don't really seek it out, or I don't know. I stay busy. I do a variety of things, but I'm really good at figuring out like figuring out technology. I'm not like
You're not stuck in the old ways, refusing to learn.
No, I can learn a new app. I know, I mean, I trust, I've just been into technology for so long. It's like, I don't freak out anymore. Like, I know if it's good technology, if it's a good app, it's been created so an idiot can use it. It's been created so a child can use it. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't freak out anymore.
Yeah. When you got here, how did you get into the Bellingham music scene? Was there one person that got you in?
There was an open mic at the Cookie Cafe. That's what it was called, the Cookie Cafe, and it was on Cornwall Avenue, and I went to it, and then I started going to it. Oh, Jesus, I have to tell you. Okay, I have to tell you. The last night I was in Tucson, before I drove to move here, I was going to leave the next morning, and I left the next morning to drive to Bellingham, leaving my time in Tucson behind. I had lived there for 17 years, and I had left my apartment. I just had a car packed, and I was sleeping at Soundings of the Planet. They had a new property down there. It was a nice place, Many Hands Courtyard. They bought this beautiful, used to be like a classic Mexican hotel with a beautiful, like Mexican style with a fountain in the middle, this beautiful property. And I was staying in the meeting room. There was a bed, a fold-out bed in there and stuff. And I couldn't sleep. And so I got up. And I walked outside, and my room was kind of adjoining this like big covered patio area, and like trucks could come in, and it was like a loading dock area, but it was outside and stuff. And so I was standing there, and it was like a new moon. There was no moon. I could see the stars and stuff. My eyes were adjusting. It was probably like 3 a.m, and the roof where I was standing under was probably like 20 feet above me, and it was pretty high up, and I'm standing there, and like if you're like in the dark, sometimes you see little weird, do you see things like little weird globs of light? I don't know, you think they're just weird artifacts, maybe that your brain or just your, I don't know what you're seeing, but I was out of the corner of my eye, I felt like I was seeing shapes move on the underside of this roof that was over me. And I'm like, that's weird. And so I went in, and I got a flashlight, and I'm like, there's something up there. And I stand in there, and I waited until my eyes adjusted again, and then I thought I saw things moving. And I flashed my light up to the ceiling, and there was nothing there. And I'm like, that's weird. And I clicked off my little light. And then I did it again. I kept thinking there was something up there, and I'm like, I didn't see them. I had lived in Tucson for 17 years, never saw this before. And then I'm like, I think there's something up there that's running away from the light. So then I turned on my flashlight, but I pointed it away from where I was seeing things on the ceiling. I pointed it like on the other side of the ceiling, but there was just enough ambient light that I could kind of see what was up there. And there were these white, translucent geckos. I had never seen them. I didn't even know they existed in Arizona. I didn't know anything like that existed. But they're like white, they're like albino geckos. And you can like see like into their organs, man. They're like white. And it's crazy. And then I was like, wow. And then I went back in and I laid down. And then I'm laying in my bed. And then my mind is racing. And this is the first thing it's the first thing I ever wrote. I swear to God, this thing came to me. It came to me in full. And I sat up. I started writing it down. And I said, listen up, people. Now here's the hap. I got a gritty little ditty called The Planet Rap. Friendship and laughter is what I speak, so let's join together to increase the peace. Now, the thing to do before you even begin is to not separate because of the color of your skin. Love one another like friends, like family, like kin. Reach out and help a stranger, then you got a new friend. Then you do it in your house. That's a good place to start. Increase the peace with your family, then you're doing your part. In the master plan, we can all understand, so join me, let's jam it, say peace on the planet. And then the shout out is, peace on the planet. Shalom in your home. Peace on the planet. Shalom in your home. And anyway, that thing became a performance piece. I had that piece when I came to the Cookie Cafe, to that first open mic I went to. I had this thing, and I was into rap. I was into rap. The reason I came up with that is our record label. We wanted to reach out to elementary schools. We had an outreach program. It was called Increase the Peace. And the idea was people that worked at our record label, myself, we had a girl, Sapphire. We had two other people that weren't musical. And there were 4 or 5 of us. Greg was a guitar player. He was musical. He had gigs and stuff. He was a musician. So there were 5 of us. And the idea was we would go into these elementary schools with instruments, percussion instruments and stuff, and we would talk to these kids about making music, about what it's like. So we did, and we contacted this school that was in South Bellingham, like in the Barrio area, where I first ended up going to work for that company. We went to this elementary school, and we were going to go before 2 classes. And so we went to this, they were 4th grade classes. Things really come around. That's when I started music, 4th grade. We go to this 4th grade class, and it's an honors class. It's like an honors class. And it's very mixed race. There's Mexican and black and maybe some Asian kids, and Native kids and white kids. And it's a very good class. And so we played our little music. I had a little keyboard, and Sapphire her mother was an artist on the label. Sapphire was like an amazing singer, and like it's an amazing thing. And the kids were enthralled. And then we gave them all we had bongos and rattles, and like we did a thing with them, and the kids were all into it and excited, and we had a little question answer, whatever, and it was great, and we were stoked. And then we went to make the second presentation, and the second presentation was in the cafeteria, and it was 3 4th grade classes, the general population, like the general prison population. Whatever. It was like the regular kids, 3 classes, and in the cafeteria, and it was absolute chaos. There were teachers and teachers' aides, and kids were running up. They had picnic table style benches in the cafeteria, whatever. Like we're in there, and kids are running. Some kids are good, but there were kids that are running across the tables, and we're like, and they're telling the kids to sit down, and like, here's the presentation and stuff. And so the 5 of us, we start playing our music, and the kids were like flying off the wall, running and like knocking shit over, and it was so bad that Sapphire, our goddess, like our singing goddess, like Sapphire was like, anyway, she was just like her name, man. She was like a goddess. She was crying. She was sobbing. Everybody was, our group, we couldn't play. We couldn't continue playing because the kids were so loud and just like not into it. And then finally I was like, hey, I yelled into the mic. I'm like, hey, and everybody stopped. All the kids stopped. And I said, if you're not into this, I said, what kind of music are you into? This is 1992, and I had no clue. I'm like, what kind of music? I said, or no, I said, are you guys even into music? And they're like, oh, no. And I hear all this like cacophony of answers and stuff. And then I said, well, who are you into? What kind of music are you into? And in unison, 100, I don't know how many, there were probably like 100 kids in there. It was 3 classes. There could have been 100 kids, 30 each. Rap! I'm like, I was stunned. Like, it was like rap was kind of Well, it'd been around, but not that long, 92. I mean, it had been around, but not, it was just getting big to me, but no, they were into it. And then I was like, what? And I said, well, who are you into? And they said, like in unison, as much of a unison as rap was, they said, Snoop Dogg. Kids would still say that. I don't know. But I was like, what? And then shortly after that, I moved here. But I had that in my consciousness. That's how I came up with that weird rap came, because our program was called Increase the Peace. So that's how this rap came to me, like it was called the Increase the Peace rap. And
I love that it came to you on your last night, and then you're in Bellingham and you're like going to an open mic. So that's what you performed at the open mic, was that?
Yeah, it was my thing. Yeah, I had this thing. I had this thing, and like, I feel like I still have it because I don't know. It's not too many like 60-plus-year-old like white rappers, you know. So, yeah, I was kind of Beastie Boys. That was kind of my knowledge of it at that point. So I was keen to it.
And so you went to an open mic here, and then
I was in a lot of groups. I was in a group called a lot of hippie groups. I was in a group called Hathara Kisa, and Hathara Kisa, we found out that we were the largest live music, like musicians and belly dance troupe. We had 5 belly dancers, and I think we had like 8 musicians. And we did do a gig at Folk Life, and that thing existed for a couple of years. And I think by that point what was I doing? I think we played gigs. I played some things when there wasn't power. I played guitar. Like, so we would do like acoustic gigs at like parks. We'd just do like impromptu things, show up and play. And when there was PA and a system, I'd play keys and stuff. So that was cool. And several groups like that. I was kind of like, it was a lot of hippie stuff. I had some friends that were like, that were really good, knowledgeable, younger guys, brothers, the Cisneros brothers, African drumming, and played that. It was original music. And we had a really good bass player and keys, and that was kind of like trippy trance stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I played with tons of groups, R&B groups. I've had several duos. I had a band. I've had a couple of original projects. I had a 7-year project called, we would never call it this today. It's a different time. But from about 2007 to 2014, I had a band called the Patriots of Tomorrow, and it was pretty much all original, and I was principal songwriter for that. It was rock band, and it was a lot of like, it was a lot of. I've done a fair share of activist rock. I don't know. I'm like into technology and stuff, and I had a duo after that group. I had a duo called Twin Sisters, and that group was just me. It was just a duo, drummer and me on guitar. And
who was the drummer?
Chuck Kitterman. Yeah, my friend Chuck Kitterman. And Chuck was the drummer for Patriots of Tomorrow. Chuck is a dear good friend of mine. We've done several music projects together. And so Chuck was the drummer for that. And that was it was about 2 years, mostly bar gigs. We did a couple of little like mini backyard festivals and stuff. But also that was almost all original music. A couple of covers like Bowie and I don't know stuff. But that was really cool. And I don't know.
How did you end up meeting all the members of Cats? And were you the one that put Cats together?
I did. And so I did. I had this connection with Stone, and we've mutually supported each other on projects. And then after I left Ebb, Slack, and Flood, Tim Fisher invited me to come to band camp. Initially, that was with my duo with Bailey Ann Martinet, Ruby Flambe. And so he invited us to come, and so Bailey and I played it. Did we have a drummer? I don't think we did. I think it was just the two of us. Maybe David Vaughn's played with us. I can't remember. And then Bailey and I stopped playing, but Tim kept inviting me back. And then I played solo a couple of times, and then I brought Stone out one year, and Stone played with me. And then the next year, I played with Stone. I accompanied him on his material. And then I met I guess it was two, maybe it's three. Time flies, man. I met Selena. I think I met Selena separately from band camp. I met Selena through Leo Boots. Selena was playing with me, Leo Boots. He was sort of mentoring her. Selena, you've interviewed Selena, right?
Yes.
Have you? Yeah. Selena's a huge inspiration.
And
to
Leo
me.
just lives down the street.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he's coming on the podcast in a couple weeks.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
So I did. I played with Leo for a summer. I played a number of gigs. I played 4th of July in Blaine with Leo. Maybe that was 2021 or 2, and Selena. And then I got to know Selena better at band camp. And then it was the year when I saw Pretty Much Nothing there. I thought, that's the best band. I still think that. They're the best band. They're the best band in the area. They're the best rock band.
I think they are too. I know I'm biased, but
I do. I was like, damn, this is. And then I was like, when they brought Marshall on, I'm like, do you really need another guitar? And I was like, oh yeah, man, it's fucking rocks. So I didn't even talk to Miguel. But I was in love with him. And then Selena, I kind of knew her already. And then she played. Did I play with Leo too? I must have played with Leo. It must have been Leo and Selena and I think we played. I think Leo played there. And then with Selena again. And then I had been like, and then I started thinking about it. And I started talking. Stone was the first person I told. And I said, I want to have a band with Selena and Miguel and you. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do this band. And then I talked about it for a while, but I didn't really know Miguel. And I didn't know if Selena would. And then I kept telling Stone about it. And he was like, quit fucking bugging me, man. Just fucking ask him. Like, quit bugging me about, like, if you want to do it, just do it.
That's a good Stone.
He's so pragmatic. He's pragmatic. He's like, come on, dude. Like, do it or don't.
Dude.
Sink or swim. Swim or sink. And so I did. And I didn't know how it was going to work out because Miguel was a guitar player and Selena was a guitar player and Stone was a guitar player. But I knew I wanted to play music with those guys. And I thought, well, one of them could play bass probably. And then maybe we'll find a drummer or something.
But you knew that Stone used to drum.
No, I didn't know it. I didn't know it until I finally asked those guys, until I finally asked the two of Miguel and Selena. And then Stone was like, well, if you're going to ask them, he said, I'm only going to play drums. I'm not going to play guitar. And I'm like,
you're like, yes.
I'm like, do you play drums? I didn't know he played drums. He said, I played drums like 30 years ago. And I said, really? I said, okay. I said, I just trusted him. I'm like, sure. I'm like, okay. But I'm like, and then I asked Miguel and Miguel says, I'm not playing guitar. He said, I'll play with you. I'll play bass. And I'm like, do you play bass? I'm like, maybe I should get Gibson to play bass. Like, do you even play bass? And so, and the rest is history. So,
well, I know after the saxophone, the bass guitar was the first instrument Miguel picked up.
Miguel's really good bass player. Miguel's excellent.
Yeah.
Miguel's in 6 bands.
Do an impersonation of Miguel. You did Stone. So now do Miguel. I'm Miguel. I'm in 6 bands. There you go. Well, no, I was going to say.
No, he doesn't say that. I said that. I'm like, dude, you slut. How many bands are you in?
Well, when he joined Cats, though, I'm pretty sure
It was just pretty much nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, I don't know, man. I'm like,
I think he should ask permission from his other bands before he joins a new one. We have to have an intervention at some point. He's one more band away from an intervention.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, he'll find out whatever is sustainable, right?
Exactly.
And it's,
yeah.
And, but yeah, I feel like, I just feel very blessed that I went through a big change of life after 2020. It was a lot of introspection, and life is very different. And I feel like I definitely had a resuscitation or a revival or a new way of looking, a new inspiration or energy to write. I've written a lot of music in the last couple of years. Like I'm still writing a lot of music, and I'm going to be 63 years old next Saturday. And I just feel like, I'm feeling the age coming on, but I'm doing pretty well for my age, and I feel like I'm at my peak, like artistically and creatively, and I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I'm doing good work. I feel like maybe it's just my personality type. I'm just gonna keep pushing through to the end. Like I feel like evolution is like, it doesn't need to stop. So I just feel blessed that they're on board with me, and I feel like they're on board with me because they like the material and because they like me on some level. I don't know. It's just a real blessing to be doing this, to have like an original music rock band like at this time. Anyway, I just feel so blessed, and I'm just like taking it. I told somebody recently, my open mic host, he said, "How are you doing?" And this is just like I said, I'm living each day like it's my first and my last. Like I'm living it like I'm trying to look at things with fresh eyes, and then I don't want to leave anything undone. If I can do it, I don't want to be I don't want to procrastinate. I don't want to put things off anymore. Like this is my first year booking for a band ever. I've never booked. It's always been like somebody else has booked. I've been in somebody else's band, or I've just gotten gigs sort of like by talking to people and just like networking and stuff. But this year I've never wanted to do it, but this year I'm doing it. And anyway, gotten some gigs. I've been reaching out, and we got some gigs coming up, and I don't know. I just feel fortunate just to be doing new things and having people on board to do it with and collaborate with. And
I think that's important for you to say, I'm 63 and I'm at my peak. I think that just that stereotype that once you hit a certain age, it's downhill, like you're supposed to hit a certain age and then stop doing all this stuff. So I love that you just said that, because I think that a lot of people need to hear it. And I'm thinking back to, like you were saying, your old piano teacher, your fuddy-duddy piano teacher, she was probably in her 30s. And, so it's a good, I don't think, I think just kids just can't absorb that idea, but like they always have this idea of like, oh yeah, if you're 40-year-old or if you're 50-year-old, and you're just like, oh no, like I'm still, every day is a new peak or whatever. Now I mentioned before, oh yeah, I love Cats. Cats Like Us. You guys do Doors covers, and then you were just talking about all your original material. Do you guys have an album coming out soon? Are you recording?
We have an album. We do. We have an album going on at Stones, and it just takes a while. It takes a while because of logistics. The actual time spent recording, it's pretty fast, and we know the songs already, so we play them. But logistics, having bands in 2 counties, and then also just the realities of life. We're all like 9-to-5ers and stuff, so it's like it can only happen on weekends. So it's we make fits and starts, but we have like. Anyway, we are the short answer is yes. 10 tracks. There's 10 tracks, and 2 of them, Stone and I decided. We're like, no, we're going to release singles. We're not going to wait until that's how things are done now anyway. people release singles, and then when the thing's done, we can release that as an album. But we're going to do 2 singles at a time. So we have 2 that are about, both of them are about, they are about 85-90% done. Need some vocals and little things added. So yeah, there is an album, and I kind of want to do I want to see if we can get a good live recording. I don't know. That's hit or miss, I think. But I'd like to have. Anyway, so the answer is yes and yes. Okay, so I'll do this one. I pictured what I would play here, and I didn't think I would want to play this one, but I am going to play this one. It's called High Plains Grifter. It's also known as So Many Hoes. And I wrote it. It's pretty new. It's just the band plays it. And I originally wrote it about Hunter Biden. And I was thinking about High Plains. I was thinking about people like at the highest levels, like they just get by on life based on their like family ties or their notoriety or the connections to the president or whatever. And I thought I wrote this song about Hunter Biden, but then I was like, no, it's about all those people. It's not just Hunter Biden. It's like it's a lifestyle. There's some people that operate at that level. So it's called High Plains Grifter, and I don't know. It's a kind of funny song. You probably heard this story maybe once or twice, times 222. You want a piece of me? You better get in line, because I'm bought and sold ahead of my time. The life of the party and the last to leave. I got a bridge to sell, another trick up my sleeve. Looking for a handout with a velvet glove. Not afraid to push when it's time to shove, because every day's a gift I keeping on. I'm feeling so fine about the cloud I'm on, 'cause I don't know where it's from. I don't know where it goes. So much money. So many hoes. I don't know where it's from, and I don't know where it goes. So much money. So many hoes. Oh no. High Plains Grifter. Oh no. Right up the nose. Oh no. High Plains Grifter. Oh no. That sniff is part of the song. It's a drug song, but we don't do drugs. But anyway, that's why that's there. That's deliberate. I'm trying to make sense of senseless. I'm on the fence, defenseless. Life in the balance, hunkered down in the trenches. The fix is on like monkey wrenches. Trying to maintain my identity. Trying to maintain my integrity. I'm on the fence, defenseless, because trying to make sense of senseless. Because I don't know where it's from. I don't know where it goes. So much money. So many hoes. I don't know where it's from, and I don't know where it goes. So much money. So many hoes, oh no. High Plains Grifter. Oh no, right up the nose. Oh no, High Plains Grifter. Oh no. This is where the solo is. I woke with my cranium caved in. I found myself strung out, strolling the pavement. I never understood what you better behave meant. Positions of power lead to enslavement. Standing on a rooftop, questioning gravity, the pain in my mouth, it feels like a cavity. I got all these numbers in my little black book, code name Alpha, that shit is shook. So hot it's cool, I love to cook. I'm snowing in July, just take a look. Because I don't know where it's from, I don't know where it goes. So much money, so many hoes.
I don't know where it's from, and I don't know where it goes. So much money, so many hoes. And I don't usually end the song this soon, but I'm ending it now sooner because it's really hard to play on this little keyboard, but it's fun. And I could just do a really long ending, but I won't. It's done.
Bob, thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.